Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, wanderers and seekers, we are living in an age where the body is glorified and the soul is forgotten. A world that whispers temptation in every advertisement, echoes lust in every song, and celebrates sensuality while starving spirituality. But I ask you today, what if the secret to unlocking your true potential lies not in adding more to your desires, but in subtracting one? What if by desexualizing your mind, you could reclaim the strength you never knew you had? What if that single shift could launch you into a rapid transformation? Desexualization is often misunderstood as suppression, but in truth, it is a profound form of liberation. The modern world has confused indulgence with freedom, but real freedom is the ability to say no, to choose clarity over chaos and purpose over pleasure. When a person begins to desexualize their mind, they are not rejecting their humanity, but instead reclaiming mastery over it. Sexual desire is not evil, but when it dominates our thoughts, our energy is scattered, and our highest self is muted. By lifting the weight of constant sexual imagery, fantasies, and urges, the mind becomes light, agile, and free. To desexualize is to quiet the noise that constantly calls for attention. It is like closing 1,000 browser tabs in your mind, so you can finally focus on the one window that matters: your purpose. What we often think of as natural urges are actually conditioned cravings, fed by media, algorithms, and endless visual stimuli. The more we feed these impulses, the more enslaved we become to them. But when we begin to redirect our attention, when we cut the cords to lust-driven thoughts, a different power emerges: willpower. C.S. Lewis spoke of the soul as the true essence of man. Our soul yearns not for fleeting pleasures, but for meaning, truth, and eternity. Desexualization allows the soul to breathe again. It's like taking your foot off the brake that's been slowing your progress. Suddenly, there is room for deeper thoughts, bigger dreams, and higher intentions. The constant internal conflict is replaced by peace, and the need for external validation fades. You begin to operate from a place of wholeness rather than emptiness. This is not about guilt. It is not about demonizing desire. It is about discipline, choosing to channel energy into what uplifts rather than what drains. Every moment you resist distraction, you invest in your power. Every time you conquer an urge, you build spiritual muscle. And soon, that muscle becomes strength, and that strength becomes transformation. Desexualizing your mind is not a loss. It is a gift, the gift of clarity, the gift of freedom, and the gateway to becoming the version of yourself you were always meant to be. When sexual desire is constantly at the forefront of the mind, it acts like static noise, distracting, disorienting, and draining. But when you begin to exercise discipline over these thoughts, something incredible begins to happen: clarity. Clarity not just in thought, but in direction, decision, making, and focus. You start to see your goals more vividly, feel your purpose more intensely, and act with more intention. Sexual discipline is not about rejecting your humanity, but about choosing to master it. When you no longer allow lust to rent space in your head, your energy begins to concentrate, and your life begins to accelerate. Sexual thoughts, when left unchecked, scatter the mind. One moment you're working, and the next, you're lost in daydreams or distracted by images that offer nothing of value. This constant diversion fragments your attention and makes even simple tasks feel heavy. But when you decide to desexualize your thinking, even partially, your cognitive bandwidth expands. You're no longer leaking energy through fleeting distractions. You reclaim time, mental stamina, and most importantly, inner peace. In this space of self-control, your creativity blossoms. Ideas begin to flow because your mind is no longer busy with fantasy. It is free to imagine, build, and innovate. Your goals no longer feel distant. They become immediate because you're no longer wasting the hours in mental indulgence. One of the greatest lies told today is that sexual freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But true freedom is the ability to not do something when everything inside you is tempted. That's where real power lives. That's where greatness begins. C.S. Lewis believed the human soul was designed for something eternal, not just momentary pleasure. Sexual discipline brings you into alignment with this truth. It allows you to use your time and energy in ways that elevate rather than enslave. The result is rapid change, first in mindset, then in habit, then in life outcomes. You become more alert, more productive, and more emotionally stable. Your relationships improve because you're no longer driven by desire, but by character. Focus becomes your new fuel. Vision becomes your compass. And the noise that once clouded your path is replaced by silence. And in that silence, purpose speaks. We live in a culture designed to keep us addicted. Every click, every scroll, every advertisement is engineered to stir desire, especially sexual desire. It's not a coincidence. It's a business model. The more distracted you are, the more products you buy, the more hours you waste, and the less time you spend building something meaningful. The system profits when your mind is weakened, and one of its most powerful weapons is lust. But when you begin to desexualize your mind, you break that cycle. You become harder to manipulate. You begin to see clearly how often your desires were not even yours. They were planted. The truth is, your attention is the most valuable currency in the world today. Big tech, media, and marketing companies fight for it with precision. They weaponize attraction to hijack your focus. Whether it's the suggestive thumbnail, the provocative scene in a show, or the carefully designed algorithm on social media. It's all meant to keep your mind in a loop of craving. But the moment you step back and say, no more, you remove yourself from their control. You stop being a consumer and start being a creator. That is the beginning of personal power. This power grows with every disciplined decision. You start using your time differently. You think differently. You notice that you're not as easily swayed, not as emotionally reactive, not as distracted by every passing trend or image. Your inner world becomes more stable, and your outer world begins to reflect that change. People start noticing your presence, your self-control, your clarity, not because you're louder, but because you're centered. Quiet strength speaks volumes. C.S. Lewis warned of a world where we would be too distracted to know ourselves, too entertained to seek truth. That world is now, but you don't have to remain trapped in it. By choosing to desexualize your mind, you're not just changing a habit. You're resisting an entire system built to keep you small. You're reclaiming your autonomy, your vision, your power. And that choice begins a chain reaction. Because when you become immune to the manipulation of lust, you become immune to fear, doubt, and dependence. You finally see the world for what it is. And more importantly, you see yourself for who you can become. When you desexualize your mind, the effects ripple into every area of your life, causing personal growth to accelerate at an extraordinary pace. Sexual distraction, while often normalized or even glamorized, quietly drains mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. It's like having a small leak in your foundation, barely noticeable at first, but over time it erodes your strength, focus, and self-worth. Once that leak is sealed, your energy stabilizes. You begin to feel whole. And from that wholeness, growth happens, quickly and powerfully. Without the constant noise of desire, your emotions settle. You no longer ride the highs and lows of attraction, rejection, fantasy, or guilt. Instead, a quiet stability takes root. You become more emotionally intelligent, less reactive, and more grounded. This emotional steadiness is a superpower in today's chaotic world. It allows you to make clearer decisions, navigate relationships with maturity, and remain focused on your long-term goals without falling into impulsive choices. What once felt like a daily internal battle becomes a life of peace and purpose. Confidence begins to rise, not the shallow kind based on validation or appearance, but real confidence rooted in self-control. When you know you can master your most primal urges, you begin to trust yourself deeply. You no longer live at the mercy of mood or temptation. This trust in self becomes the soil where courage, leadership, and purpose grow. You start to take risks, speak truth, and act with integrity. You're no longer chasing pleasure, you're chasing greatness. Spiritual depth also expands. With less mental clutter, your heart becomes more open to reflection, prayer, and connection with something greater than yourself. C.S. Lewis often spoke of how our lower desires can keep us from hearing the voice of God. When those desires are tamed, we begin to hear that voice again, not in thunder, but in stillness. You begin to realize that you are not your urges, you are your choices. And when those choices align with truth and discipline, transformation is inevitable. Ultimately, desexualizing your mind doesn't just change how you think, it changes how you live. You become more productive, more aware, more aligned with your higher calling. The growth you once struggled to force now flows naturally. You're no longer just existing. You're evolving, rapidly, powerfully, and with divine clarity.